The sun was a merciless flame that day, swallowing the horizon in golden fire. Elias McCready had ridden through worse heat before, but never like this, never with blood running warm down his arm and dust choking his lungs. His horse stumbled, foam gathering at its mouth, and Elias knew they were both near the end. Somewhere behind him, the echo of rifle shots faded into silence, leaving only the wind and the creak of his saddle. The rustlers had taken everything, his supplies, his canteen, his strength. All he had left was his will to keep moving, though he wasn't sure why anymore. Maybe it was stubbornness, maybe it was the ghost of the soldier he used to be. He leaned forward, whispering to his horse, "Easy, boy. Just a little farther." But the animal groaned, shuddered, and collapsed beneath him, its chest heaving one last time before going still. Elias fell to his knees, dust clinging to his sweat-soaked shirt. The desert stretched endless in every direction, cruel and silent. No sign of life, no mercy. His throat burned with thirst, his tongue heavy as a stone. He pulled himself beside the horse's body, sitting in its shadow as though that would protect him. He tried to laugh, but it came out more like a rasp. "Well, partner, guess it's just you and me." The wind answered him with a low whistle. For a moment, Elias thought of the ranch back in Texas, how the grass used to shine under the morning dew, how his mother's voice carried through the house, calling him in for breakfast. That was before the war, before the fire, before loneliness became the only thing that stayed with him longer than his own shadow. He looked up at the burning sky, eyelids heavy. "If you're up there, God, don't let it be slow." His vision blurred. He felt the heat crawling under his skin, eating him alive. And then, just as darkness started to pull him under, he heard it, the distant thud of hooves. Slow at first, then faster, growing louder until the sound was all around him. Elias squinted through the haze. Out of the waves of heat rose a figure, a rider cloaked in sun and dust. At first, he thought it was another outlaw. His hand twitched toward the revolver on his belt, but he was too weak to draw it. The figure came closer, a woman. Her hair was long and black as night, streaming behind her like smoke. She rode a paint horse with markings that gleamed copper in the sunlight. Her skin bore the color of desert clay, and her face, strong and calm, looked carved from stone. When she stopped in front of him, Elias saw the bow slung across her back, a knife at her hip. An Apache woman. He'd heard stories, some cruel, some kind, but none had prepared him for her. She studied him silently, eyes narrowing. Then, in a voice low and steady, she said, "Don't move." Elias lifted his empty hands, the ghost of a smile crossing his face. "Trust me, ma'am, moving ain't something I'm good at right now." She dismounted, her steps careful but certain. The sun glinted off the blade she carried. Elias could barely lift his head as she knelt beside him, her shadow falling across his face. Her eyes were sharp and watchful, like she was searching his soul for lies. "You are hurt," she said. "I've been better. You are lucky I found you. Can't say it feels that way." She frowned, touching the wound on his side. He winced but didn't pull away. "The bullet passed through. You will live, if you want to." He gave a hollow laugh. "That's the hard part." She ignored his words and tore a strip from her skirt, pressing it firmly against the wound. Her hands were steady, though her expression betrayed a flicker of curiosity. He wasn't like the soldiers she'd seen before, angry and cruel. His eyes, tired and gray, carried something else. Grief, maybe, loss she recognized. "Why?" he asked hoarsely. "Why help me?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked toward the horizon, where vultures circled lazily in the heat. Finally, she murmured, "Because the desert has taken enough life. It will not take yours today." She helped him to his feet, or tried to. He swayed, dizzy, his legs barely obeying. When he fell again, she caught him with surprising strength. "You cannot stay here," she said. "You will die." He tried to smile through the pain. "And if I do, you can say you tried." She glared at him, anger flashing in her dark eyes. "You are foolish, the kind who gives up before the earth even decides your fate." He wanted to argue, but the words never came. His vision dimmed. When he opened his eyes again, he was on her horse, his body slumped against her back. She had lifted him somehow. Small as she seemed, she carried him with quiet power. The world blurred as they rode, the rhythm of hooves steady beneath him. He could smell the faint scent of sage in her hair, hear the steady beat of her heart against his chest. For the first time in years, he felt something like peace. Hours later, They stopped in a narrow canyon hidden by red stone cliffs. The sound of trickling water reached his ears, a spring. She helped him down and led him to the cool shade of a rock shelter. A fire already burned nearby, its smoke curling lazily toward the sky. She gave him water, spooned into his mouth from a wooden bowl. "Drink slowly," she said. "You have been in the sun too long." He obeyed, watching her move with quiet grace. She wasn't young, at least not like the girls he'd known back home, but there was something timeless about her. Every motion she made was deliberate, born from survival and solitude. "My name's Elias," he said finally. "Elias McCready." She didn't look at him. "I did not ask." He smiled faintly. "Still figured you ought to know the name of the man you're patching up." After a moment, she replied softly, "Tiana." He nodded. "Pretty name." She glanced at him then, and though she said nothing, he saw a spark of warmth behind her guarded eyes. She sat beside the fire, grinding herbs in a small bowl, and spread the paste gently over his wound. The pain burned, but her touch was careful, her fingers trembling only slightly. As night fell, the desert cooled, and stars spilled across the sky like diamonds on black silk. Elias watched her as she sat near the flames, her face glowing in the firelight. She was humming softly, a melody he didn't recognize. It sounded like sorrow wrapped in hope. "Didn't think angels sang in Apache," he murmured. She frowned without turning to him. "I am no angel. Could have fooled me." The faintest smile touched her lips before fading again. Later, when he drifted into uneasy sleep, he dreamed of his old ranch, of laughter and horses and rain. But when he woke, he found her sitting beside him, eyes scanning the horizon. She hadn't slept at all. In the morning, before the first light broke, the sound of other horses echoed through the canyon. Tiana stiffened. Elias saw the flicker of fear cross her face before she masked it. Moments later, several Apache warriors rode into view, bows drawn. Leading them was a man who resembled her, same sharp eyes, same fire in his expression. "Tiana," the man said sharply. "What have you done?" "He was dying," she replied calmly. "He is white," her brother snapped. "Their kind killed our people. And you bring one here." Elias tried to rise, but pain forced him back down. "She should have left me. She knows it." Chaska glared at him with hatred. "You speak of what you do not understand. You should be dead." Tiana stepped between them. "If I had left him, his death would have fed nothing. Not the land, not the spirit." Her brother's voice cracked with anger. "And what of ours who died by their guns? Will his life bring them back?" "No," she said softly. "But maybe mercy will bring me peace." For a long moment, silence held the canyon. Then Chaska spat on the ground and growled, "He leaves at dawn. If you keep him here, we all suffer." As the men rode away, Tiana turned back to Elias. He could see the conflict written in her face, the pull between duty and compassion. "You didn't have to stand up for me," he said weakly. "Yes," she replied, her gaze steady. "I did, because you remind me of something I lost long ago, hope." She turned away, the firelight catching the edge of her profile. Elias watched her for a long time, feeling something stir in his chest that he hadn't felt in years. That night, while the wind whispered through the canyon, he whispered too. "Thank you, Tiana." She didn't answer, but in the flicker of the firelight, her hand reached out and rested gently against his. For the first time in a long, long while, Elias didn't feel alone. Days melted into one another like sand slipping through an open palm. Elias recovered slowly, the wound on his side healing under Tiana's care. Every morning, she would leave before dawn, returning hours later with herbs, berries, or strips of dried meat. She moved through the desert like part of it, silent, sure, and strong. Elias watched her from where he sat near the fire, trying to understand her world, a place where every sound carried meaning, every shadow had a story. She spoke little, but when she did, her words stayed with him longer than the wind. He wanted to thank her, truly thank her, but he didn't know how. So instead, he helped in small ways. When his strength returned, he gathered wood, cleaned her tools, or fetched water from the spring. Tiana didn't say much, though sometimes he caught the smallest flicker of approval in her eyes. Slowly, a fragile trust began to grow between them. One evening, as the sun bled across the sky, painting the canyon walls in shades of fire, Elias spoke quietly. "I used to think I'd die alone," he said, staring at the glowing horizon. "Guess fate had other plans." Tiana, kneeling near the fire as she tended to a pot of boiling herbs, didn't look up. "No one dies alone," she said. Someone always remembers. Her words hung in the air, soft but heavy. Elias turned toward her, curiosity mingling with gratitude. You've lost someone too, haven't you? For a moment, she didn't answer. The only sound was the crackle of the fire. Then she said, my husband. He went to trade with the settlers near Fort Stillwater. He never returned. Her voice was steady, but Elias could hear the pain buried beneath it. When I found his horse, its saddle was empty. They said bandits took him. I found his hat near the river, but not him. Since that day, I promised no one would die alone if I could stop it. Elias didn't speak. There were no words strong enough for that kind of grief. So he did the only thing he could. He reached out and touched her hand, rough against his palm. For a second, she didn't move, but then her fingers relaxed beneath his. That quiet moment said more than any promise could. As days passed, the bond between them deepened. Elias taught Tiana a few words of English she didn't already know, and in return, she taught him Apache phrases. He learned to track footprints through dust, to listen for the language of coyotes and crows. She showed him where the earth hid water and where it warned of snakes. Sometimes she laughed at his clumsy attempts to mimic her steps, a sound so rare and beautiful it made his chest ache. At night, under the vast dome of stars, they would sit side by side, the air cool and scented with sage. Elias would tell her stories of his past, of the war, the fire, and the loneliness that followed. Tiana listened without judgment, her gaze soft and distant. You carry too many ghosts, she told him once. He smiled faintly. Maybe, but one of them led me to you. That made her look away quickly, but he saw the faint flush rise to her cheeks. She pretended not to hear, yet he could tell his words had reached her. Peace, however, was fragile in the wild. It never stayed long. One afternoon, as Elias and Tiana returned from gathering herbs, they noticed the smoke first, a thin gray trail rising beyond the ridge. Tiana's face hardened instantly. Hunters, she whispered, not from my tribe. They moved quietly through the rocks until they reached a narrow ledge overlooking the valley below. 3 riders were moving across the plain, their rifles glinting in the sun. Bounty hunters. Elias recognized the look of them, the kind of men who killed for coin and smiled about it after. His stomach dropped when he saw one of them holding a crumpled paper. His own face was drawn on it. Damn it, he breathed. They're after me. Tiana turned sharply. Why? He hesitated. They think I killed a man back in Texas. A lie spread by the one who did. I ran before they could hang me. Her eyes stayed on him, unreadable. And did you? No, he said quietly. But I've killed before, in the war. I guess it don't matter much to them what kind. Tiana was silent for a moment, then nodded. The past always hunts those who try to outrun it. They returned to camp, and she moved with purpose, gathering her things. You must go, she said. If they find you here, they will find my people next. Elias looked at her, torn between fear and something deeper. And leave you here alone. After everything you've done for me. You are not one of us, she said, her tone harder than before. Your fight is not mine. He took a step closer, pain flashing in his eyes. Maybe it isn't, but you made me want to live again, Tiana. You think I can walk away from that? Her jaw tightened. You must. The next morning, before dawn, Elias saddled the horse she had given him. The air was cold, heavy with silence. Tiana stood near the fire, arms crossed. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Elias said softly, if I ride out, they'll follow me. They won't come here. Tiana frowned. And what if they kill you? He smiled sadly. Guess that's better than them killing you. He turned to mount the horse, but before he could, a sharp crack echoed through the canyon. Gunfire. Tiana's head snapped toward the sound. The bounty hunters had found them sooner than expected. Elias grabbed his rifle and limped toward the ridge, heart pounding. Tiana followed without hesitation. They moved through the rocks, low and quiet. When they reached the edge of the canyon, Elias saw 2 men below, scanning the cliffs. The third was nowhere in sight. He raised his rifle, but his hand trembled. Tiana steadied it with hers. Their eyes met for a heartbeat. Then he nodded. The first shot rang out, echoing through the stone walls. One of the men dropped instantly. The second spun, firing wildly. The bullet grazed Elias's arm, tearing through flesh. Pain seared through him, but he held his ground. Tiana loosed an arrow that struck the second man square in the chest. Silence fell again. When it was over, Elias staggered, clutching his bleeding arm. Tiana rushed to his side, helping him sit against a rock. You are bleeding again, she said, voice trembling. He smiled weakly. Guess I'm getting used to it. Her hands worked quickly, pressing cloth to the wound. Her eyes were fierce but wet with tears. Why did you not run? He looked up at her, his voice low. Because I don't run from the people I care about. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she reached up and brushed his hair from his forehead. You are a foolish man, she whispered. But your heart is true. That night, the air was thick with the smell of gunpowder and ash. Tiana sat beside him, the fire casting gold on her face. When I found you, she said quietly, I thought you were a ghost. Maybe you were. Maybe we both were. But now, she looked up at the stars. Now I think you are alive again. Elias took her hand in his, holding it gently. No, Tiana, you gave me back that life. The next morning, before the sun rose, Elias knew he had to go. The bounty hunters might be gone, but others would come. Staying would put her in danger. He packed what little he had, and when he turned, she was already there, watching him. Where will you go? She asked. He shrugged. Somewhere the past can't find me. Maybe north, maybe west. I don't know. Tiana stepped closer. The air between them was thick, heavy with words they couldn't say. The desert remembers everyone who walks it, she said softly. If the wind calls your name again, you will know it is me. He reached for her hand, squeezed it one last time, and climbed onto the horse. For a moment, he couldn't move. The look in her eyes, strong yet breaking, held him there. Finally, she said, Go, handsome cowboy. Ride proud. He nodded once and turned toward the rising sun. The horse moved forward, hooves striking against the hard earth. As he rode away, the wind picked up behind him, carrying her voice faint but clear. I won't let you die alone. Elias smiled, the ache in his heart sharp yet alive. The desert stretched before him, endless in gold. For the first time in years, it didn't feel empty. It felt like home.